Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar news update video. So in today's video, I'm going to be covering Avatar News's update, kind of clarification news post to what was posted yesterday, which of course was the news that the first Avatar Studios animated series is going to be about the Earth Avatar after Korra. For the most part, that's what the entirety of that post was all about. Something we hadn't really heard much about at all. The series, the animated series, like the other series, not a movie. But that obviously brought up a lot of questions because a lot of people were like, whoa, this was relatively low on my expectations for what they would do one of these projects about. Is within like basically the first year of Avatar Studios immediately decide to go to the next Avatar after Korra. What does that mean for Korra and all these other projects that we had sort of teased and insider information about previous Avatar news posts about for other projects? So this post is basically what is the plan for Avatar Studios once it actually hits, and then also clarifying how all the previous insider information from earlier in the year fits in with the more new information. So anyone who has sort of like their doubts about like, is Avatar News an accurate source of information? Didn't he get the information about the Kyoshi movie wrong? He explains in this post as well what happened there. And I think it's relatively reasonable what happened. So what the news here is that Avatar Studios' slate will consist of a new animated movie and show debuting every year starting in 2025, including the Adult Gang movie and New Earth Avatar show in 2025, and the now reconfirmed Zuko movie and Kyoshi movie, both now undated. So, like it says, follow up to the news from yesterday, of course. This is all about the complete picture of the long-term animated slate and specific updates. So, the news is, starting in 2025, Avatar Studios will release an animated movie to theaters and an animated show on Paramount Plus every year. That just by itself is a pretty crazy thing to say, that these productions are usually so difficult and they take such a long time, that the mere prospect of us getting a movie and a series in a year, and then following that up the next year with another movie and another series, and the same the next year, is pretty crazy, because that's what he talks about here. This is what he knows about the first 3 years of Avatar Studios' plan, so 2025 to 2027. He does mention there are more projects than slots in development, highlighting that they're obviously throwing around a lot of ideas, and that they have ideas for basically what will also be the stuff for basically 2028 onwards as well. And this post is his attempt to explain effectively why he knows sort of like specific things are locked in, but that other projects are happening, but it's sort of unclear if they're 2026, 2027, or 2028 onwards, basically. So it means that a nice way of looking at it is that in 2025, we're getting the confirmed Adult Gang movie in October 2025. And also the news from yesterday, the not fully confirmed, but, you know, insider information heavily suggests this is the case. And there's an interesting update on this in this post as well, which we'll get to. Animated show about the next Earth Avatar. So that's a pretty interesting year straight away there. The really obvious thing that everyone expected that should start Avatar Studios off very, very well. And then the I need to be a little bit convinced on this. There are some potentially good ideas, but is it the right thing to do to move Avatar further into the future? Like, that's a bit more of an experimental project. We'll see how that goes. That's really interesting, of like both ends of the scale in terms of like playing it safe with a project. 2026 is then going to have an animated movie and an animated show, and the same for 2027. And then this paragraph is all about explaining what theoretically kind of could be here. So he doesn't know is whether the shows will be cumulative, and this is basically that he doesn't really know if like what the situation is with seasons on each of these shows. So Earth Avatar is getting a show, but is it just a one and done? Like, we'll get all the episodes in 2025 and that's that done, until the Earth Avatar gets his movie, which we're also kind of expecting, which is an interesting thing as well. So how does that work? So going into 2026, is this just season 2 of this, or are we getting season 2 and a whole new show? And so there's a few clarifications here that he mentions, is that he does know that the 2025 show and the 2026 show are two different things. So either the 2025 show will be a one-year series, or 2026 will have both, and then 2027 might actually have 3 different series. And then the other interesting point here is he says, the 2026 show is not a mainline entry in the franchise. And he cites that Mike and Brian mentioned in like a podcast interview that they were exploring all these different mediums and styles and stuff like this. So he's thinking that it might be the Earth Avatar show continuing. I'd maybe lean more, again, I don't have all the information he has, it's just that at the very start of Avatar Studios, they said they would do movies, series, spin-off shows, and short form content. So I'm wondering, is the animated show here, this not mainline thing, potentially the first time we see maybe a spin-off show appear on one of these lists, which I think might actually make a lot of sense, in that the thing you'd immediately sort of question with a lot of the way the schedule is sort of shaping up here is like, are they going to have the time to do this much content so quick, so back to back? Like movie, 3 movies in 3 years and 3 shows in 3 years. But think about it this way. The one thing that you probably have to assume in all of this is that Flying Bark are doing this. They likely are sort of the Avatar Studios movie animation studio. They probably will have to bring in another animation studio to work on their shows. Otherwise, I don't really know how exactly this is going to work. But if we assume that this is like, say, like 12, 13, 14, maybe up to 20 episodes, this is fine because it's the first year and they have all the years like from now until 2025 to do this. But then as you go from 2025 into 2026, it's like, if this is another pretty full lineup, that's a very tough schedule. But if this is just like a mini series thing where it's only maybe like 6 episodes or something like that, that could make a little bit more sense. But anyway, that's that. But anyway, he then goes on to some more details about the other stuff. So the Zuko movie he had mentioned in previous updates from much earlier on in the year still exists and is separate from the adult gang movie. So straight away that confirms to us that 2 of the projects are 2 separate ATLA movies. And he mentions how this is something that pretty much was just figured out with recent information in the last couple of days, is that the Zuko movie is not this movie. This one, which is probably one of the first things he heard about, is separate. So that is good to know. He also assumes that it will remain as sort of second in the slate for movies, meaning that the Zuko movie would be like this slot. But he hesitates to fully confirm it for now, because obviously that, I suppose, theoretically is what got him into a little bit of trouble with his information with the Kyoshi stuff, as we'll get into in a second. But realistically, the idea seems to be that the Zuko one, I get the impression, is one of the more heavily kind of confirmed ones. So it probably is one of these 2 slots here. Then, the Kyoshi movie still exists and is now undated. So this was the big thing that led people to doubt if Avatar News was correct on all of this stuff, is what happened with the Kyoshi movie, which was apparently the first thing, but then went from basically, oh, it's the first movie, to being, there's like nothing about it, basically. Does it even exist? So, based on new information shared with me, a Kyoshi movie definitely was one of the earlier projects in the works earlier in the year. Based on the wider picture of the slate I have now, it seems that it has been delayed to outside the first 3 years slate and is now undated, which means it actually will be probably post 2027. So I take that to be is that, like, at the time, much earlier in the year, the Kyoshi movie probably was planned for one of these 3 slots, and at one point might have actually been planned as the first one. But at the very least, it is still in the contest for these earlier projects. It just appears that now it's not one of the immediate ones that is for sure planned for the first 3 years. But it's nice to know that it's still potentially happening at some point. Interestingly, there's no information about Korra stuff, so there's no update, but I strongly assume she'll still have movies and or shows at some point post 2025. Again, he can't seem to really confirm. He doesn't have any permission to share information on pretty much most of this stuff. So the Korra movie, or maybe it's a show now, could still be one of these projects. It's just highlighting that he knows about a lot of different projects, but doesn't necessarily know for sure, talking like 4 years in advance, which one is in which slot and how exactly that all works. Because that's where we're at in this. It's probably not even fully locked in Avatar Studios, so how necessarily would they know kind of leaked information style thing. Then he goes into some depth on basically the explanation for the whole Kyoshi movie debacle, the thing that caused the mistake. And he goes to the whole timeline of events here. So again, it's important to realize what the headline was that got everyone excited. Kyoshi movie for 2024, Zuko movie for 2025, and Korra movie for 2026. Probably the most hyped kind of general piece of news from the year was this post that he put up. But before that, he had said that there was a prequel movie in development and that there was a Zuko movie in development. He also basically knew but couldn't say that there was an Aang movie in development, a Korra movie in development. The first movie was 2024, second 2025, and that the Zuko movie was definitely the second project. And interestingly, I think twice in this article he mentions that all of this information comes from Paramount. So I guess his source, where he gets his information from, either has a source in Paramount or is the source in Paramount. So that's interesting to know. And yeah, just highlighting like what they did and didn't know, and it's just all this relatively scattered points of information that they're trying to piece together themselves, and so on. And so then there's also this, the thing that happened, like the one journalist who mentioned that they saw a teaser for an Avatar Studios project at the Annecy Film Festival. And what's very interesting about this is that this now seems to be basically a teaser for the Avatar after Korra, which I think most people, when we heard about it, had dismissed that as being a potential option, because why would they do that show in a way? But now it seems like that is more of the direction that we're potentially heading in with this. But anyway, getting to the core of like what actually happened with the whole Kyoshi movie information, like the prequel movie and stuff like that. At the time, he knew this, that there was a first year movie for Avatar Studios. There was a first year Earth Element project, and that there was a Kyoshi movie in development. Those were the 3 like separate pieces of information. And it seems as he and other people were kind of clarifying what is and isn't information, a couple of things happened. That like these 2 bits got kind of added together, these 2 bits got added together, this and this got added together. And so what ended up happening was that, oh, well, I guess the Kyoshi movie is an Earth project and it's the first year movie. When in reality, it seems like the first year movie is this, the Earth project is this, and there is still a Kyoshi movie in development. It has just now been moved away from where other projects are, basically. So that's the kind of thing here. It's like there's a lot of projects, and obviously the information being presented to them, I guess, in kind of scattered kind of pieces of information, of course. So all that's very, very interesting. And then it's just going through sort of like the rest of the information. You know, the launch year was originally 2024. He didn't make it up. So it's just highlighting that this is an evolving process. The idea that like the fans are just like making up like specific things isn't the case. This probably was planned for 2024, but then they realized that they need to wait another year to make all this actually happen in the way they want it to happen, and so on. Even think about like the way information on the animation style of the show came out. No one was lying to anyone or making up information. When we first heard official information about the animation style, it was one of the heads of Paramount saying Avatar is doing CG projects. And even I think the second mention of it was like primarily CG with a little bit of 2D. And eventually it got flipped on its head to being mostly 2D with a little bit of 3D, which I think is basically what Brian said it would be. All of those things that at a certain point of time were true and correct. It's just that it changed and evolved over time because of the specific way specific pieces of information actually came out. And I think the same thing is here. So then we get to this, which is obviously this update here. And this is what's so interesting here. We've known about the first movie since July, Adult Gang. Now we know that the first year show is the next Earth Avatar, which explains the teaser at Annecy with an Earth symbol. Because that was the weird thing, is like, it was specifically mentioned that they were shown something that ended like on an Earth symbol. Why would they do that if that was a teaser for the ATLA movie? This makes a lot more sense now. So really interesting stuff here. Obviously, this will be a lot cooler if it came officially from Avatar Studios and that they put out a big communication clarifying a little bit about this. They probably wouldn't go into this level of detail, but at least something like clarify that, like, yeah, this is what we're planning to do, and give us just a basic kind of idea. You know, start communication officially from Avatar Studios, but we're not there yet, and so we have to rely on our insider sources here to compile what information they have together. But at least it gives us a sense for what we are working with and what we're doing. And the cadence of releases seems like way quicker once we get going on Avatar Studios than I expected, which is very, very cool. Like I discussed already, it might seem like almost like this impossible thing, but given the scope and how broad they're trying to be, they already have one animation studio which is hiring lots and lots of people that's going to work on this. And if they're developing a sort of house style for Avatar that they can get like going very, very efficiently, I think they could definitely make it work where like they go from this to this and they have a movie every year. A lot of this depends on sort of like length, like how long are they aiming for these movies to actually be? Are we going for like nearly 2 hours, or are we talking 90 minutes, or maybe even a little bit shorter than that? What level of animation are we going for here? Are we going for full-on super deluxe movie animation, or are we aware that we're trying to kind of hit a nice kind of cadence of releases, and so we're going for sort of like good without taking an eternity to do it type thing? That's what I suppose we don't really know just yet. And then like, how does that work with like an animated show as well? Well, I guess they have to bring in another animation studio, and you sort of wonder, the likes of Studio Mirror, which we expect to, I suppose, at some point do something with Avatar Studios, will they return for any of these projects? That's quite interesting. And then the other thing you'd think about is definitely just, okay, now that we know a lot of this stuff is still, you know, up for kind of a project, what do we have? So very interestingly, we're going to potentially start year one with the safest option, with the most experimental option, which is very, very interesting. This makes complete sense. This is interesting, but I think that's like almost like in a way like the perfect way to showcase Avatar Studios, that they're willing to kind of give fans what they want and cover the fill-in gaps, stuff that fans want that we already know about, while also still doing the creative and new stuff that will advance the franchise forward. then we know that there's at least another ATLA movie that is potentially going to happen as well. And you sort of wonder, like, okay, are these two ATLA movies going to be some sort of a, like, maybe finale for, like, the ATLA story? And at that point, it's just sort of filling in a few gaps with smaller projects and stuff like that. But the big story of ATLA might conclude with maybe those two movies, leaving them able to do a little bit more experimental stuff as they go forward. You do wonder, again, what the situation is with regards to seasons of this show, because I believe it was confirmed in this. Let me just check this again to make sure I read that correctly. Yeah, an animated movie featuring this avatar is coming to theaters in the years after the show comes out. It won't be an insanely long wait. Interestingly, does he mention that movie anywhere here? I'm not sure. So I kind of wonder how that movie factors into this as well. I don't really know what to make of that. Because if this is happening here, and then there's a movie about this avatar coming out afterwards, but it's after the show ends, I think is the information that they have. So if this has like a season 2 in 2026, or maybe even in 2027, that means, like, is the movie here planned for after that? Or is it this or this? I don't really know. And that's where it's so interesting to speculate about. Like, once they get this, like, new stuff going, like, does that mean we won't actually have that many years with our new Earth avatar? I'd be surprised if they just made it sort of within like a year or two, we've done most of the content with that new avatar. But then, like, there's a sense for, like, you're going to want to do Korra at some point. You're going to want to do Kyoshi at some point. And you're doing these other styles of content as well. So it's good to know that that stuff is still happening. Sure, it'd be nice to have more concrete information about what specifically is happening with Korra, but it seems like it's just one of these things where, like, look, it is one of the confirmed projects. They're kind of on the table, but there's nothing to say about it right now. And my guess on that is that it probably does mean it is probably a 2027 release, which is where it was positioned before. So it probably still is, like, roughly there and thereabouts. And so it's probably, like, one that, like, they're going to do, but in terms of information actually coming out, that basically, like, you know, insiders can report on, there's probably not that much talk about that one compared to maybe some of the 2025 ones. Because, again, this stuff will be 2 years before this stuff. And that's a notable amount of time. So, I don't know, like, this definitely makes me feel pretty positive about Avatar Studios, in that, like, once we get there, there will be a lot of stuff. Because the worry, based on just, like, the official information, is potentially that, like, okay, 3 movies and that's all they're really talking about. We'll do Avatar, and then it'll be like, what, just pause, wait, like, what, a year and a half, 2 years for the next movie, and then just do that. And, you know, you don't like to break it down this way, but, like, it would be a little bit, I think, frustrating as a fan to be like, we've waited all this time and we get, like, say, a 90-minute movie, and then have to wait like 2 more years to get the next 90-minute movie. At least this way, it seems like, okay, we're getting a lot of animated content for Avatar, and that's what they want to do as well. So that is good to know, definitely. So yeah, like, I appreciate that he explained the whole situation of, like, what happened with the Kyoshi movie and all the kind of crazy information, because it helps to put into perspective the idea of, like, he's not just given the full, like, written thing. He's given, like, kind of, like, weird, kind of almost, like, vague bullet points like this, and has to kind of piece together what that means with other pieces of information before it gets presented to us and stuff like that. So it's nice to kind of know that more side of things of, like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And again, for anyone wondering, like, apparently he's getting his information from Paramount as well. And, you know, he links a source here as well, so that's all kind of fine. So yeah, there's that. The only other thing I'll mention is, I don't have the article up right now, but I saw it earlier on today and posted it on Twitter. That is that apparently, for the casting for the first Avatar Studios movie has started, and apparently the direction that's happening with that is that everyone except Dante Basco is getting recast. So he will keep the role as Zuko, but it seems like every other character who we expect to be in that adult Aang movie is going to be recast. And it seems like this is for like kind of like dual reasons. One, some of these actors haven't really voice acted much since ATLA. Some of them aren't going to be, I suppose, maybe suited anymore for voicing the character even as like an adult. And the other point is that it seems like Avatar Studios in general is taking an approach to be more diverse with its casting for voice actors, trying to make it, I suppose, more accurate to the inspiration for the actual like nations. As we know, each nation is kind of based on different kind of aspects of like different Asian cultures and stuff like that, different countries. And I think they're trying to do more of that, like you're seeing from like the live action Netflix show kind of casting type thing. They're trying to do that, it seems like, with the voice acting as well. So it's hard to really speculate exactly on like what is that the right way to do things. But like straight away, I think just like Aang was a very obvious one. They were going to have to do that and recast Zach Tyler Eisen just because he's not a voice actor anymore. You maybe would question a little bit with like, say, like Jack Desena and stuff like that, and that like I'm sure like if you asked him, he probably would come back, because I think you get the impression that's a role he does really, really like. And a lot of the other voice actors like who have been a bit more involved in the fandom right now, I feel like they could definitely like do a job at doing the characters like just a little bit older. But again, it depends on specifically like how old are we talking here. If we are more talking just about like everyone in or around like 18, then I think, you know, if the original voice actors are capable of it, why not bring them back? If we are talking about them maybe more being sort of like early, maybe mid-20s, then yeah, I guess a few of the roles would need to be changed. And at that point, if you are recasting anyway, why not do it in your new kind of style of casting? I think it's more if there's any frustration, it's just sort of stuff like, say, like Janet Varney has already sort of like in a way like come out and said that like she probably won't be voicing Korra again, and she wants it to go to a different voice actress. And I think a lot of fans would definitely be on the side of, you know, again, if we're still talking about Korra in the age range of where she was at the end of the series, if it's not too much of a time skip, I think that role probably should be offered to Janet Varney because she is the original voice actress. I just think like, look, you can still maintain a diverse casting while still utilizing actors who are still capable of doing these like original roles. Because, you know, it's one of these things like, is it a negative if you feature some of the original voice actors but not others? And some of them are diverse, but some of them aren't. Like, it's always like a tricky thing. But you know, I think a lot of people would definitely be advocating for probably, you know, if it makes sense and the performance is good, try to get back original voice actors, especially because like a lot of the projects are going to be about like new stuff. Where there will be completely new roles, like entire cast of characters that will be completely new. The couple of projects where you do have like pre-established characters who have voice actors already, I don't think that goes against any sense for like wanting diversity with the voice cast to include the ones who are still kind of capable of doing those performances. Because I think that in a way, one of the last things you want is maybe like not quite getting a major recasting right when you didn't have to do a recasting, and criticism being leveled at that voice actor for not being potentially up to the standards of the previous voice actor. You don't want those sort of situations to happen, but it's a complicated situation and it's relatively early. I don't think we know too much about it. at the moment, but it's something to keep an eye on, I suppose, as theoretically next year we might actually start to hear about the results of this and like find out, I guess, what specific characters are going to be in the movie. If we find out about casting calls for specific characters, who gets cast and stuff like that. So it's very interesting. But that's pretty much going to wrap up what I want to say here in the video. So what are your guys' thoughts on this secondary news update from Avatar News to go with the big news from yesterday? A better look at the sort of plan, the schedule for the first couple of years of Avatar Studios, and then a lot of his news being more sort of like now compiled together and not as kind of scattered and random anymore. Where do you stand on what the schedule looks like at the moment? But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.